I call to order the regular board meeting for the Ridge-Niles School District 64 for May 18th, 2020. Carol, can you take roll, please?
Sotos.
Here.
Zealous here. Biaggi.
Here.
Pearl.
Here.
Riles.
Here.
Little.
Here.
Sanchez.
Here.
All present.
Terrific. Okay, administration has asked us to go into closed session tonight under 2C1 to discuss employment-related issues and 2C2 related to collective bargaining issues. If someone would like to make a motion to go into closed.
So moved.
Tom's got the motion. Anyone have a second?
Second.
Denise, that was you?
Yep.
Great, thanks. Is there any discussion on going into closed session for these two issues? Okay, Carol?
Okay, Zealous, yes. Riles.
Yes.
Sotos.
Yes.
Little.
Yes.
Biaggi.
Yes.
Sanchez.
Yes.
Pearl.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great, great. Thanks, MJ. Okay, welcome back, everyone. The board is reconvened from closed session that started at 5:30 this evening. The board was in closed session pursuant to Section 2C1 of the Illinois Open Meetings Act to discuss a couple of specific personnel issues related to employees of the district, and also under 2C2 to discuss collective bargaining matters. So the board has now come back from closed, and we are ready to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. So Larry, would you lead us in the pledge?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Larry. Okay, I don't have any other specific opening remarks other than, again, just to remind the public, it looks like we have several attendees again on our call, and to remind the public that they can send email messages into the email address that is set up on the board or the district website. And Natasha's monitoring those for us throughout the meeting tonight. And as we have specific agenda items, if you wish to comment on them, you can send an email live during the meeting. You could have sent it beforehand. And obviously, again, during public comment on non-agenda items, we'll take any comments specifically from the public on anything that we're not covering on our agenda tonight. So with that, Natasha, do we have anything on public comment on non-agenda?
We have no comments at this time.
Okay. All right. Well, then I think we will move on to the first issue for us, and that's just board housekeeping. Are there any changes to the agenda as we have in front of us this evening? Anything to add, anything to delete, or anything to amend from the board?
This kind of relates to the agenda. Tony, were you planning to stay for the whole meeting, or were you going to leave at a certain point? Look, Tony Louisi.
I've always stayed for the entire meeting.
Okay.
That's up to the board, though.
Yeah, no, there's just one issue. It's on the consent agenda that I was going to move out of there, and I think one thing was relevant for one of your issues, so I just wanted to make sure that we didn't have to move that up.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's up to you, but yeah, I'm not planning on going anywhere unless the board
Sure.
tells me.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So if there are no changes to the agenda, we will move on to agenda item A2, and that's actually Dr. Martin, who's going to do that for us, a recognition of tenured teachers.
Yeah, so thank you. Tonight is our annual event where we recognize our teachers who will be leaving the probationary status and moving to tenure at the beginning of the next school year. So it's my pleasure this evening to introduce the District 64 staff who will receive tenure at the start of the next school year. So according to Illinois School Code, a teacher is considered probationary for the first 4 years of full-time service that they work in a district. During this time, our probationary teachers are observed more frequently than all other staff. They're critiqued very often, and they're really kind of put in that analysis of, are these people that we want to keep long-term in District 64? So it's that time for us to really make a decision on our young teachers in our district or our teachers new to our district. So at the end of this 4-year process, these teachers have consistently shown that they meet the high standard of instructional quality that is expected from our teachers. They have done great things for our students in the past 4 years. They've worked extremely hard. So on behalf of the Board of Education, the administration, the Park Ridge Education Association, we would like to recognize these teachers by removing the title of probationary teacher and bestowing upon them the recognition of tenure. So I'm going to read their names here. And they would typically be called up and we would give them a certificate. We will still be providing our teachers with their certificates at another time, obviously in person, probably at our building level. But we have emailed those people and told them they can be, tune in to hear their name called tonight. Or obviously they can play it back and watch it. But we'd like to recognize those teachers now. So I'm going to read their names. We have Catherine Belogi of Field School, Evelyn DeBritnio of Emerson, Caitlin Cooney of Washington, Carrie Downs Columbia, also of Washington School, Kathleen Graham of Field School, Jillian Gronwick of Lincoln, Amber Loriano of Washington, Ashley Lichter at Jefferson, Robert Rasmussen at Franklin School, Amy Rooney at Jefferson, and Alex Teeter at Emerson School. So again, we'd like to congratulate them all, thank them for 4 great years of hard work, and we'd like to, again, welcome them to being recognized as tenured teachers in District 64. Congratulations.
Thanks, Dr. Martin. Congratulations, everyone. We really appreciate everything that you do for the district and for all of the students of District 64 and for your commitment to teaching. So thank you. All right, we're going to move on to our next agenda item. And Dr. Olson, I think you're going to lead this one for us.
Yes, so we're very happy tonight to be joined by Mike Schaub, and he's going to share with you our ELF grant winners for this year. And we are very thankful to the foundation for continuing these awards in the midst of everything. We had to reschedule a couple of meetings to get everything approved, but we were able to do it through the pandemic. So I'll turn it over to Mike, and welcome to the board meeting, Mike.
Mike, you might be on mute.
Mike, I think you're on
Oh,
mute.
there we go. Nope. Mike, hold for 1 second. We're having a hard time hearing you. There. Oh. MJ, any thoughts?
He shows as unmuted, so it would have to do with his device. So does he have?
Right. Yeah, we're not getting any sound, Mike. Can you hear us? Mike, can you hear us? Okay.
Yeah, he can hear us, it looks like.
Yeah, it looks like maybe broadband or bandwidth might be a little issue there because it's a little choppy on the video.
Looks like.
Or it might be that his mic isn't enabled.
Yeah,
for
Maybe Mike
Zoom.
can call one of our cell phones and we can hold it up to the thing if it's for quick.
Or Mike can actually call in if you want to. Mike, if you could hear me, you could try calling in as well using the phone number that's been provided. Okay. Rick, I'm not sure if he's frozen.
Yeah, it looks like this
so
video is frozen right now. What does everybody think if I just quickly move A7 up for a quick second on the agenda? We do the personnel report because that's a quick one. And maybe in that time, Mike can see if he's able to dial in and we can just keep him on hold for a second. Tony, we
Sure.
don't need a motion to move that up, right? I can move that by presidential edict. Okay, executive order, I've just done that. Pretty cool. All right, so let's move to the personnel report real quickly and we can take a motion on that. And then if there's specific questions for Dr. Martin, that'd be great. So the motion is on Appendix 7.
I move that the Board of Education of Community Consolidated School District 64, Park Ridge-Niles, Illinois, approve the personnel report for May 18th, 2020, noting that the personnel report is based on the recommendation of the superintendent and not upon the board's direct knowledge regarding any of the specific individuals selected for employment.
Second.
Rebecca, was that you? Great. I'm sorry I have to keep asking that all the time. It's hard to tell when people do the second, so I'm somewhat guessing. All right, so it's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions for either Dr. Olson or Dr. Martin on the personnel report that we have in our packet? Okay, I don't see any questions, any hands raised. Natasha, any questions from the public on this?
No comments received.
Great. Okay, Carol?
Okay, Biagi,
Yes.
Little,
Yes.
Riles,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Pearl,
Yes.
Salas, yes, Sotos,
Yes.
motion carries.
Great, thank you. All right, well, we knocked that one out. Looks like Mike's video is still frozen, and I can't tell. It doesn't look like he's dialed in yet, right, MJ?
Can you hear me? I dialed in.
there he is. Hi, Mike.
I got audio. I don't know if the video is coming back, so it's launching. But if you want, I can just do it by audio if that's okay for you.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay. All right. I'll get it going. I apologize. So it's kind of like that Jim Valvano speech of when he's first coaching and ready to rush in the door and the door's stuck and all that. So. Let me get started all over again. My name is Mike Schaub. I'm a father of 3 children at Franklin School. My wife is also the librarian at Field School. Today I'm here to represent the Elementary Learning Foundation, commonly known as ELF, where I've served as this year's chair. Thank you for giving our organization the time and the place to publicly recognize the extraordinary and innovative educators that are being awarded ELF grants for the upcoming 2021 school year. Since 1994, ELF has established and supported innovative educational programs by awarding grants to teachers and staff who are committed to excellence in education. This year, ELF has had 12 grant submissions with requests totaling just under $59,000. Tonight, we are proud to announce the Board of Education and the community that 6 grants totaling more than $21,000 will be awarded to 6 schools in District 64. This total brings the amount of money that ELF has granted to District 64 to over $835,000. Tonight, we are excited to recognize 20 educators
I think we got disconnected.
Yep, we did. I still show Mike on our screen of panel.
Yeah. Trying to unmute him, but doesn't seem to be working.
Nope. Was he dialed in separately, MJ? Oh, there we go. No.
Yeah, there you go. Is that,
Mike's, we see Mike's face now, but no video, no audio.
Can you hear me?
Yep, there
yes.
All right, perfect. We're getting there. I appreciate.
All right,
bearing-
great.
Okay, so I'm going to start off the first grant. We're recognizing Carpenter Elementary teachers Cynthia Saputis and Kevin Michael. On the accessibility side of things, there's no other instrument or adaptive technology available that does what the Sphero spectrums can do to make instruments accessible to all students beyond just physical, gross motor, and fine motor issues. This allows the students with special needs to participate fully and much more independently in music class by making the same music other students are making. Also from Carpenter Elementary are the intervention teachers, Camille Derwin, Holly Barrett, and Jenny Belmonte. Pause to Read is a project designed to give intervention students easy access to a variety of books at their just right reading level at the home reading. The project would create Pause to Read library of fiction and nonfiction books for the K-5 students in intervention, which it will continue contain numerous titles for students to select from. Next, from Field Elementary are Jess Radick and Caroline Schaub. Kano coding kits, when implemented in our school, in our classrooms and innovation stations, will complement our future-ready curriculum and teach students in a way that is simple for beginners and expansive for experts. The objective is not to only create future-ready students by teaching them 21st century technology skills, but also to reignite their passion in literacy and math by pairing the coding activities with books using them to support current math standards. The next grant awarded to Jefferson School and teachers is Carrie Carmichael, Georgette DeMarinis, and Christy Holtz is a mud kitchen. A mud kitchen at Jefferson would allow for daily opportunities for our children to interact with nature while allowing creative expression, strengthening fine motor development, and encouraging social, emotional, and language development as children collaborate together. Mud is a great medium to teach our early learners about math and science by comparing and measuring, and children are encouraged to explore and get messy. The next grant recognizes from Lincoln Middle School, Tim Gleason and Bill Connor. Goals for Lincoln Education and the guidance office team are to cut down on students' absences, teach students coping skills, and can be used in and out of school, empowering teachers and staff to respond to students' anxieties and needs, as well as there's programming to educate parents on how to address student anxiety and school avoidance. This grant will help build a number of supports for students experiencing anxiety that affects their school attendance and school avoidance. And the last grant that we are awarding tonight will benefit all 5 District 64 elementary schools, and it was envisioned by the following music teachers: Jessica Kwanzny from Field, Colleen Carlson from Franklin, Margaret Gorsick from Roosevelt, Brian Cabot from Franklin, Jenny Kaputska from Field, Alana Knapp from Roosevelt and Washington, Sean Ryback from Washington, and Cynthia Saputis from Carpenter. Incorporating world music drumming into musical experiences provided to 3rd through 5th graders, 3rd grade students would enhance their elementary music experience. This curriculum would provide musical benefits as well as social emotional benefits to our students. The objective of the project are to grow students' musical abilities through practicing rhythm and strengthen the classroom community through learning and performing. I also wanted to thank Dr. Olson, Dr. Lopez, and Ms. Warden for being part of the process with these grants and providing feedback on each grant that was submitted. I can say on behalf of all ELF trustees, thank you. Thank you to the staff that wrote grants. I know we couldn't award everybody, but we appreciate the effort that you put into them, and we hope that you write grants again. On those that were awarded grants this year. Thank you again for taking the time out, and we look forward to seeing these grants put into action next year and getting the feedback of what worked and what didn't. So thank you very much, everybody, for waiting on the technical difficulties, and thank you for letting us have a few minutes to speak.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks for all the work that ELF is doing on behalf of District 64. We really appreciate everything that everyone works so hard for. So thank you. Okay, we are moving on to our next agenda item, which is the PT3 board update. Dr. Frost.
Good evening. So I'm happy to address the board in regards to the progress that PT3 has made this year. Within the board packet is a summary of each of the month's activities for PT3 since the beginning of the year. And I am going to keep my comments short because we will also hear from one of our staff representatives who could not be here today, but she sent me a statement to read, and one of our parent representatives as well. So this year, PT3 really focused on three main areas, or what we kind of considered priorities. These were continuous services, parent education, and stakeholder communication. And while some work was done on parent education and stakeholder communication, it was small in comparison to the work that we did on the continuum services, because that was really identified as the highest priority. To assist in moving forward, though, with our parent education and stakeholder communication priorities, documents of needed activities were created by each group last week at our PT3 meeting and sent out so that any staff member can work on these during the summer months. And we wanted them to have the capability to remember what we were discussing and what activities that we have agreed upon to move forward. In regards to the continuum of services, we engaged in many activities associated with that. And this is just a slight summary of it. There are others as well, but we reviewed the district's current continuum of services as well as options of other program models, a review of programs offered by the main feeder districts, as well as discussion with Lake Forest and Winnetka elementary districts and surrounding cooperatives. We had discussions about a past program model and parent experiences. And ultimately, there was the review of the presentation of the SLC model. We actually were able to do that in person prior to going into the COVID-19 quarantine. We have also discussed the findings of the audit that we had almost 2 years ago that were definitely related to outplacements, and the recommendation for the district to provide specialized programs within house. From my perspective, I believe that PT3 is engaging in sometimes difficult but healthy discussions. Members are actively engaged, listening and being respectful. The members are articulate and indicating their needs so that they can provide educated and thoughtful feedback. I believe that PT3 is moving in the right direction, and I am appreciative of the work that the members are doing. Would you like to do questions in regards to that, or would you like to hear from the other representatives first?
Why don't we hear from both representatives first, and then maybe do questions at that point.
Okay, so I'm going to read Casey Gibbons's report, and then I believe Mrs. Yanella is also available. So let me do Casey's first, and this is what she reports. Last week, PT3 met virtually to continue discussions about parent education and stakeholder communication. I was in the stakeholder communication group, which typically is a mix of teachers, parents, and administration, but no parents were in attendance last week. Staff members continue to follow up on our last conversation about communication, which mostly concerned the development of a cohesive, easily accessible website. Dr. Olson also stated that a new website is coming in the future, but obviously other learning aspects are taking priority due to COVID-19. All staff members were in agreement that a new support service website should be the starting point for stakeholder communication. Staff members also agreed that our teachers and related service staff have many valuable resources on their own websites already. The staff recommends that a task force be created to gather the top resources that can be added to the district website. The information included on the website could be community resources, ESY information, basic IEP information, the continuum of services, parent resources, and information based on IEP eligibility. It was suggested that a parent survey be sent out to gain more information about what parents would like to see. There was also a discussion about what other platforms could be utilized to communicate information, like social media pages. The majority of the staff was against posting specific information like meeting dates and times on social media due to privacy and safety concerns. Staff believes that the district should distance itself away from social media, but try to figure out a way to consolidate emails sent to parents and staff. Creating a welcome packet was also discussed to help start effective communication at the start of the school year. The staff was excited about the idea of having a packet that could be given to each parent at the start of the school year. Most teachers, case managers are currently doing this, but having a streamlined system would help consistency. The packet would include contact information of this child's teachers and related service providers, along with school or district information. Overall, the main starting point that the staff would like to get going would be a new support services special education website. We believe that an organized website will help streamline resources and communication. The next step would be to create a welcome packet and organize a team to look at resources for the website. It has been very rewarding being a member of PT3 this year. I believe we have had very honest and positive conversations, which has helped all members contribute to our 3 areas of focus. Dr. Olson has been a great addition to our group. He does a phenomenal job of keeping us on track and productive with our time. I look forward to seeing the next steps implemented. Sincerely, Casey Gibbons. Can we let Mrs. Yanela speak?
Mrs.
Okay,
Yanola, you're unmuted.
Oh. So you can hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Okay, good. Can you see me or no? I'm on my phone because I was having technical issues with my computer.
Nope. We just see your name.
Can I? Okay, well, that's fine. It's Andrea Yanella. I wasn't at the last meeting, so it sounds like from what Leanne said, it was somewhat maybe clarified from the previous meeting that I had gone to. We, at the previous meeting, discussed similar things. We also talked about ESY and how that's sort of determined and how that is communicated and sort of being consistent with ESY, meaning if one child's getting it and they have sort of similar needs, desires, why wouldn't somebody else with a similar situation have that? What are sort of the guidelines for determining ESY beyond just regression? Because there's ambiguity at times with that. We talked a lot about communication and we've all kind of come to the conclusion that we're inundated with information from teachers, from staff, from the principal, and that a lot of it just kind of goes, in someone's trash or just unlooked because we get so many emails. So then we said, well, maybe if it's something really kind of important, pertinent, maybe the principals of each school would send out that information, because most of the time parents will be more inclined to open something from the principal than just the teacher itself. And I found that even like with the new sort of transition with the kids coming that are outplaced into the Washington rebuild, some parents seem to know about this, some parents don't seem to know about it. There's a lot of confusion about what's going on. And I don't know, I can't remember, to be honest, if that was announced or if it's just word is sort of traveling and information's getting kind of confused about that. But that kind of, again, goes to the point of how things are being communicated within the district itself, that would be kind of important to the community at large. There were staff members when we were talking about, again, this is from not the last meeting, but the previous one that I was in attendance. There were teachers that were with Washington, and then some parents, and then myself included, had kind of said, like, I think personally that it's a good thing that we're addressing the outplaced kids, and giving them a home and a place to go to school in Park Ridge rather than having them go someplace else. But I said that there were, going to be a lot of unhappy parents in the general community when they find out that this extra space that Washington had sort of fought tooth and nail for to get is now somewhat being deprived of them. And that also some of the staff members had relayed sort of the same frustration about that. It is kind of what it is, but I think that the feeling is a little bit of anxiety and frustration, and again, just sort of the lack of communication within the community itself, from just people talking to me across the street, or if I'm on a walk, whatever, they'll ask me something about that, and I kind of just give general information because I don't really know the specifics about that. I think as a whole, the group is still a very functional group. I think that as a whole, we're getting things done. I think that there was some concern recently that a lot of emphasis was being put on all of the outplaced kids and what other things were sort of falling behind because of that emphasis. So I think that the hope is that more definitive plans, more definitive action will be taken place now that that is somewhat resolved. So I'm hoping that, moving forward, even with a pandemic, we'll kind of get to a little bit more of the nitty-gritty things that are still sort of pending. I think that's basically more or less it, and I can answer for any questions that you might have.
Leanne, did you want to add anything else before turning it over to the board?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
I just said I think that was more or less.
Okay, yeah, great. And if you wouldn't mind hanging on, because I'm sure some of the board members are going to have questions for you as well. So thank you for that summary. So board members, any specific questions for?
I just want to say that a lot of what Andrea heard from parents is pretty similar to what I've heard, is that, they're happy that there is progress with the continuum of services, but they're, I don't know if I would say, well, I guess I would say disappointed. I guess they're disappointed with the form that it took. And they are happy that something's happening, but, they want more activity or just more progress that would help address the needs of all the students, not necessarily just the ones who were outplaced or would be outplaced. And then the other main concern I've heard from parents is that PT3 members kind of felt like they were along for the ride, like that they were being presented to about certain topics, and they talked about a lot of things, and it might be like group therapy, but in the end, what did they really accomplish except for, hearing out the administration, which, that's fine if that's what the function of the PT3 was, but that's, I guess those are the two main things. Andrea, I don't know if you heard about that too, with dissatisfaction with the process.
Yeah, that actually, I did forget to mention that as you were speaking. I was like, oh yeah, that did come up. And I don't know, other than one or two specific people within PT3, I don't know how much that was verbally mentioned to Leanne during PT3, or if it was more private. I know that certainly there were a couple individuals that were more direct about that, but yes, I think that the people that were sort of most affected by that situation were frustrated with the fact that I think they felt like that a decision had already been made and that they were being appeased by, well, we're going to talk to somebody at Lake Forest and we're going to talk to somebody at this district to see what their programs are. And, you know, I personally, I don't know if that was the case or not, but that was their sort of frustration sense that they were saying, hey, we want to listen to someone from this district on how they do their breakdown of, I'm not using the right words, but how they would address this issue with the outplacement. And I don't think that was achieved. I think that Leanne and Dr. Olson made certainly attempts to address that by speaking to those districts, and we obviously looked at data and things like that, but I think that there wasn't, I guess, as much of a collaborative process that some of the parents were hoping for in PT3, and there was frustration from that aspect of it.
Rick, do you mind if I ask a quick follow-up question to that? Because I think it's an important topic. Carol and Andrea, are you saying that the majority of the PT3 members felt that way, or just one or two?
I don't know if it was.
I'd say it's a handful.
Go ahead, Carol.
I don't know what the majority thinks, but it's a bunch. But I mean,
I think it would be important because if it is the majority that feel that way, and it's not just one or two or three, a handful. You know, there's not a ton of people on the PT3, so I'd like to know at what level that is, because I think it makes a really big difference as to, you know, how we're discussing it. I don't want us to sit here and feel as if this was brought up tonight and the entire PT3 feels that way, unless the entire PT3 does feel that way. And then it's something that we absolutely need to address moving forward. But if it's just a handful of people, then maybe Dr. Frost can reach out to those people and see what, you know, she can do to just, you know, talk to them and see how things can move forward at the next stages, so we can address even their concerns, because their concerns are equally as important.
I think Leanne did discuss some of that with some people, but she can speak to that for sure. And I don't think it was necessarily the majority of PT3, but I would say it probably was more of the majority of the parents that were specifically affected by that decision. Does that make sense? So, I mean, if we're talking maybe 10 parents, so I would say probably 9 out of 10 of those parents, or 8 out of 10 of those parents, probably would have liked more of an input or more of a feeling of inclusion in that process. But as a whole of PT3, including myself, who wouldn't be affected by that per se, or teachers, that was not necessarily the case or the sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
I think board members, we're going to continue going to PT3, so I guess we could just do that and see what people think when we go. You know, we don't have to do some, you know, survey or anything like that.
Well, and I will tell you that any parent that, or even staff member that reached out to me about questions or concerns, you know, I responded to. Even with the survey itself, I had, I think, 24 parents who had asked, or 24 people who had responded to the survey had asked for follow-up, and we tried to contact each and every one of them. I think that in the end, we had about 14 out of those 24 that I did actually communicate with, answered questions, and so forth. I am a little bit disappointed to hear what Ms. Yanela and Ms. Sales are actually reporting, because I have not had people come up and say, you know, that we're disgruntled with the process, or we weren't happy with the process. you know, I think that this is something that we have spoken about for, you know, approximately 2 years. And I think that when we started off PT3 at the beginning of the year, it was very much expressed that we had to move on this continuum of services component. And when we look at the audit, one of the big key features of it was that specialized program. But the spring before, basically last spring, we worked very hard in creating curriculum maps. And those curriculum maps affect every student who is receiving specialized services in the district right now. We did not have any curriculum maps prior to last year. And those curriculum maps are really helpful for our staff as far as knowing what resources that we have adopted within the district. And then also with our intervention coach, being able to implement those. So when I hear comments that kind of allude to the fact that parents are not understanding like some of the things that we've done internally, to me that was huge. Having reading, writing, and math programs identified and having a support in order to implement those curriculums, I think we're absolutely huge. Same thing with the Wilson program. You know, we are doing a cohort this year, and I believe we have, I think, 7 teachers on track to finish their level 1 certification. So, you know, I think part of this goes back to some of this communication piece, and I don't know that student services has been very good at maybe tooting their own horn as far as some of the good things that we have done. And maybe that's another piece for communication that we need to make sure that we address.
Andrea or Carol, can I ask just a quick clarification? I'm trying to still, I'm a little slow, I guess, apparently. I'm still trying to understand what was at the beginning of this. That, are we saying that there's a handful of folks, or again, I'm not trying to paraphrase that at all, but there's some folks that were upset with the process of how we got from point A to point B, or
Yes.
was it that they were unhappy with the end result as well? I mean, that, and I guess those, they could be yes to both of those, or no to both of those, or yes to one or the other.
I mean, I don't think anyone was necessarily unhappy with the end result. I think they thought that was something that should have been done. With any unhappiness with the end result is that it wasn't, I guess, broader in scope. But I think it was the first scenario that you mentioned. My other question for Leanne was, what's going on with early intervention screening because of COVID? I mean, are you doing them by Zoom, or are they just on hold?
So based upon what we've been given authority to do, the federal government, are you talking about like the transition kids transitioning at age 3?
Or even before, you know, like the screenings, infants, and just all of that, the stuff that you'd normally do at Jefferson.
Yeah. So one of the things that has happened with the federal government is that they've given us flexibility for Part C to Part B in IDEA. So those children who are turning 3 at this point, they are allowed to stay in early intervention prior to coming the responsibility of the school district. So I believe that that is what is mostly occurring. I know that Lisa Halverson has spoken with the CFC coordinators within the area, and she only has been reported like a handful of kids who are actually turning 3. I think she thought maybe 2 at the most. So we kind of felt like we were in pretty good shape. I think a lot of those transitions had already occurred. When it comes to screenings, trying to do screenings during a Zoom or a Google Hangout is really, really difficult. You know, you're trying to look at how a child performs, and it's not necessarily a sit down and get, it's really interacting with them. And that's really hard to do with children through a Google Hangout at that age.
Leanne, it's Andrea Yanella. You kind of went out for a second when you were speaking, and all I heard was, it's disappointing to hear when Andrea Yanella says, and then I couldn't hear what you were commenting on. So I just want to make sure I heard what you said so that I could clarify. if there was any mix up with anything.
Just in regards to the process, because, you know, I'm kind of taken aback on that. I haven't really heard that. Again, my responses to people were in relationship to the surveys and how that information came through and people asking for follow-up. I didn't have, I believe, I'm trying to think if there was anybody on PT3 that asked for follow-up with me. So I think that's a little bit disappointing for me to hear.
I don't think it was so much the follow-up. I think it was more of like the email that was sent out from the PT3 member to all of us, basically saying, this is the format that Lake Forest does, and could we have Dr. Nixon come? I think that person and a few others wanted that person to come and physically present to us. And I think that was disappointing for them because they had put all this effort into it and they had made their voice very clear that that's what they were hoping to have, and that they were hoping to meet this person and maybe sway your opinion in a different direction. I personally have no idea if you've had private discussions with them or not. That's the part that I was relaying to, that they were disappointed with that aspect of it, that they wanted Dr. Nixon to come, and I think they were hopeful that maybe his presence and him coming would be maybe more compelling for the group as a whole.
So I did reach out to Dr. Schneider. I know Dr. Schneider very well. He's a colleague, and we've engaged in some professional activities together. So I did reach out to him. You know, one of the things is that he really is he runs a co-op, and so I think he has 15 districts in his co-op, and each of those districts are really looking at the idea of running either full inclusion or specialized programs differently. And while he wrote, you know, an article in regards to it, he is also cognizant that, you know, districts are trying to make their own decisions. And so he was very hesitant about coming to join in our meeting and have a conversation without being someone who was present to understand, you know, everything that has occurred and be a part of that from, you know, an early stage. So, you know, I think for me, I felt like I needed to respect that. I do believe that we talked a little bit about that at our March meeting when we were presenting the proposal.
You did.
Yeah, there was a question in regards to it, and I think that we addressed it at that point. I think we also talked about the Lake Forest because there was questions about their model. We did look at their model. Their model was quite expensive, the way that they run it for the number of students that they have. And so, you know, there was work done. Now, granted, we had a timeline. And so if we were going to, you know, start this program, we had to have a decision made by the board in April so that we could conduct our IEP meetings in May and start planning and being ready for the start of the school year.
Other comments from the board, questions?
I just have a comment. I was at the last board PT3 meeting, and I left that meeting feeling really warm and comfortable and feeling really good about the direction that PT3 was going in. And I commented that I felt that PT3 had played a significant role in us achieving the end result for the upcoming year. And I really liked they were developing some forms for standardizing how we approach IEPs in the future. And I was really impressed. And I just really felt that it was a cohesive group and that they were very positive about what was happening in the district.
Larry, I agree with you. I went to the March meeting, I think the one prior to the one you went to. And you know, although good questions, feedback, you know, there was a good conversation, a good working group. I wonder, Leanne, the things I got excited about that you mentioned today, and that was mentioned during that meeting, the websites, you know, communication, and the welcome packet. And it seems like those are going to be so helpful to families. Are there any, is there a timeline? Is there goals? I mean, when might we see these come to fruition?
So one of the reasons why at our last meeting last week, afterwards, we kind of compiled what were the activities that were identified in the parent education and what were identified in stakeholder communication. And so last week was our last meeting for the year. So we will not meet over the summer months. But what we want to do was provide that information to people. So if you were there, you know, if you wanted to start working on some of those aspects, you could. If you weren't there and you wanted to work on some of those aspects, you could as well. So my hope is that when we come back from the fall, we will have some work that has been done so that we can start working on it right away. I think that we have a lot of good materials already within the district. It's just organizing them and putting them in a format that works well.
And, you know, I'm glad to, go ahead, Eric.
No, just to say that I think also, you know, understandably, the SLC program did take a lot of our time. And I think that sometimes it felt like the other topics sometimes had to go to the back burner a little bit. But I think now that we've accomplished that, I think next year could be a pretty big year, all things considered with the coronavirus, but can be a big year in terms of now putting some of those other pieces into place.
You know, and I wonder, just I know a website, like that's a big thing to tackle, right? But is there some sort of welcome packet, even if it's not, you know, full, like this is the ideal best welcome packet a district can have. But I think some sort of welcome, a start on a welcome packet when we get to the fall would be such a great thing for families. Even if it's not as comprehensive as can be, some sort of move on that direction, I think would be really appreciated for the district.
Yeah. And some of the teachers express that they already have those. It's not necessarily done universally. So, I mean, I think that there are some things that can be easily incorporated.
Any other thoughts, questions from the board at the moment? I was going to ask Natasha really quickly. Anything come in while the discussion was going on or before?
Nothing from the public.
Okay.
Do we want to decide who attends which PT3 meeting next? Do we have those dates?
We haven't done the schedule yet.
Okay.
And I'd just like to concur with Leanne and Eric that I think that I would agree that we all were sort of glad and relieved that that big piece of the puzzle was sort of done and resolved with the outplacement, and that I think we were all feeling very optimistic that since that was such a huge thing to tackle, that we can now kind of really get into more of the nitty-gritty things and the meats and the bolts of other needs and other issues that need to be addressed. And I think we're all feeling pretty positive about that direction.
That's great.
And I hope the board will continue attending, the board members attending PT3, rotating. Carol, thanks for bringing that up. I think it's a great idea.
Yep, agreed. Okay, well, if there's no other questions, Andrea and Leanne, thank you for the presentation and for bringing us up to speed. When are we going to do this again? just so that we keep this on track. Eric, did you?
Yeah, I think it'd be good for us to do sometime in the fall, because I think we can also update the board on the new program and kind of where we're at that point as well.
But PT3 is going to be off for the summer, so they won't meet again until what, September?
Correct.
Yeah. So we might, I don't know, might not make a whole lot of sense. Yeah, I was going to say October, November, probably.
Yeah.
If we have another meeting or two of PT3 under their belts.
Yeah.
And then we have the February 4th Committee of the Whole meeting for special ed too. So after that, so I guess, you know, we'll do this in the fall and then we'll have the February one.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. All right. Well, thank you both. Andrea, thanks for joining us tonight online. All right. We are moving to the technology equipment issue. And MJ, I think you're leading that off, right?
Yes, that would be me.
Awesome.
So yes, members of the Board of Education, thanks tonight for your time. In our memo to you, we had presented information about the district's recommendation to expand our one-to-one digital learning program into grades kindergarten through 2nd grade. We are earnestly bringing this forward to you at this time so that implementation could be set for the fall come August. These plans for our one-to-one expansion will set our students up for whatever scenario will need to happen as we live through these uncertain times. Expanding our one-to-one will allow for our students to flexibly move from in-person to remote learning and back again, something that the education space actually calls blended learning. And this expansion will give our teachers the ability to create a more consistent learning experience across the same type of device for anytime, anywhere learning. Beyond coping, or even beyond coping with how school will change after the coronavirus pandemic, even over the past several years, our talented teaching force is always exploring ways to enhance learning with technology. And our primary grade teachers specifically have already been incorporating the shared technology that we have for our primary grade students. And they have been carrying out technology enhanced best practices in teaching and learning just in a shared environment. So therefore, with the expansion of a one-to-one down into our primary grades, our teachers will have even more opportunities for our students to use technology to support effective instruction. So teacher support has already been expressed over the past few years as we've been trying to enhance learning with technology. Denise did email a great question asking about any data that supported how a one-to-one at this level does improve learning outcomes. And so I just wanted to explain that a one-to-one digital learning program is more about enhancing good instruction in person or remotely. So what technology won't do is make bad instruction effective, right? So, so the data around technology impacting learning outcomes is really more framed in the research around what an effective instruction is. So you'll have effective instruction, and technology can be the mechanism by which we achieve that. So take, for instance, the method of what we call formative assessment, or assessing students or figuring out what students are learning during a learning process. For the past year, in fact, in kindergarten, for example, one of the learning activities that they have to assess the learning standard of naming numbers and the counting sequence. So one of the activities that our kindergarten teachers over at Roosevelt was setting up was that they had students on an iPad drag numbers into a number grid. What was enhanced by technology is the ability to record those actions by each and every student. So then a teacher was able to see in action in a recorded video the students' thinking process as they were trying to complete the activity. And then so with that, a teacher was then able to adjust instruction accordingly per student the next day for whatever the student's needs are. So that's kind of an example of how technology enhances effective instruction. So with that said, I mean, even for our youngest learners, there is an impactful effect size to learning when technology is available to support effective instruction. And lastly, we see that the expansion would allow us to create a more consistent delivery of instruction, of resources, and of information to all of our stakeholders, students, parents, teachers. So through what we call a learning management system, there will be a unified digital place where all our stakeholders can find whatever information they need for the learning process. So that could include structured learning activities, our learning boards, resources, including textbooks, our research databases, our online resources for that, receiving announcements as opposed to wading through emails in an inbox, which we all, have a challenge in managing. Secure messaging to our students as well as to our parents. Sharing information with our entire learning community and having that in a consistent method. So those are the things that we're excited about as we expand our one-to-one and giving our students, teachers, and parents the ability of being able to have information, important information, on a very effective and streamlined process. So with our financial resources and the assistance of the Federal CARES Fund, we are able to operationalize the one-to-one digital learning program into our annual budgets. For this upcoming school year, we'll be able to use those federal funds to initially support the expansion of Chromebooks down to the 2nd grade. And then we would incorporate a 4-year refresh cycle so that since we were already launching into our digital one-to-one learning program in 3rd grade, we would just incorporate 2nd grade next year. And that's already been operationalized into our budget. So we expect to do that in the coming year after. For 1st grade, we would expand access to iPads from our shared scenario of 2 students per 1 device and expanding that into a 1-to-1. And then in kindergarten, we would move from a centers-based model of 6 iPads per classroom into a 1-to-1. So as you can see where the investments are going to fall. The iPads would be on a 4-year refresh cycle and would be incorporated then into our annual budget. So our initial investment in the 2nd grade would be, as the memo stated, $211,750 estimated. And then our initial plan for investment for the iPads is $280,000. So that's it in a summary. Do we have any questions? We can.
And either MJ or Luann, do you want to jump in and just explain what the CARES Act is so that you kind of understand that?
And Eric, actually, I was going to say, do you mind? I'm going to put that chart up on the screen for everybody to see, because I personally, again, I'm a little slow on the uptake, I think, but I read it a few times and I'm trying to understand exactly what we're paying and how this is going to get spread out over several years. So I just want to make sure we're all understanding it as well too. So I'm going to put that on the screen, but Luann, feel free to jump in now and start talking about the CARES Act.
What happened? Oh, there it goes. So on March 27th, when they signed the CARES Act into law, that gave states funding to help prepare for and respond to the coronavirus. One of the things that we talked about as an admin team is that having devices for our younger learners, because what the other thing that would need to happen is we need to make paper packets and deliver it to houses. So we are expecting about 171,000. We received an email today to go ahead and sign in to the grant, so I'm waiting for access for that. So we would pay for that initial investment to get second grade up and running. Our portion of the first, tranche of money for the CARES Act. So the 171 would go toward that. Let me see if I can maybe help you, Rick, understand the chart down there that MJ did. So right now you can see that this coming year for third grade, we need to buy them iPads, because prior to this year, we were buying iPads for the children in third grade.
Chromebooks.
And then they would.
Yes. Chromebooks.
That's Chromebooks.
Chromebooks.
Luann.
Chromebooks. We were buying Chromebooks for the children in third grade, and then they would get a new Chromebook in sixth grade. So what is being proposed is that we would buy the Chromebooks in second grade. The Chromebooks would, if I understand correctly, would stay at the school unless we go into remote learning. If that happened, then we would be able to send a Chromebook home with each student in second grade. In third grade, the same Chromebooks will be assigned to the students, much like we do now, and the student will keep that Chromebook until they receive a new one in sixth grade. Does that help with that part of it, Rick?
Well, I guess I'm trying to figure out on here what's new and what's, what were the existing expenses we were paying anyway on here. That's the piece I'm missing, I guess.
Yeah. So what's new is in the blue cells and in the yellow cells.
Okay. And of the yellow cell, this right here, that 170,000 of that is going to get covered by the CARES Act.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. So these are the numbers for 21, 22, 23, 24 are, I guess I'm still not understanding that. So that's
okay. So
new
those
Chromebooks here?
Yes. So that would be new Chromebooks based on the initial start of the Chromebook 1-to-1. So whereas in the past few years, we've been starting the Chromebook 1-to-1 program in third grade. And so that money has already been apportioned to purchase devices for third graders, right?
Right. So this number right here, sorry.
Yeah.
That number there would have been here.
Right.
Here before. And same thing here, here, and here. So it's not that that's a new number, it's just 1 year earlier.
Yes. Right.
Got it.
And just to make a note as well, the iPads that we currently are using in kindergarten, first grade, and in second grade are all being repositioned and reused. But those were on 4-year cycles. So eventually, in 2 years, we would have had to make an investment to upgrade iPads at that time. And so that then operationalizes into the budget as well. But we were already doing that over the last 6 years. So it really is just this initial bump up in investment for this coming school year.
Does that help for everybody else in terms of understanding those numbers now?
I just had a question about the second grade Chromebooks on the shared carts in the memo. How did that work? Because I thought the second graders, yeah, they're on shared carts, but I thought that no other students, while they were not in use, were using them besides the students who were assigned to those Chromebooks, right? Or is that wrong?
Yeah, there wasn't enough Chromebooks to go around for each and every second grader. So they would be checking out a Chromebook cart kind of when it's available or when they could fit it in or when they had a particular project or things like that to do. So it was really only like a periodic sort of thing that would happen. Does that answer your question?
I don't know. Rebecca, what was your understanding when your fourth grader was in second grade? I don't know. I thought before that each kid had an assigned number, and that's the one that they get all the time, and they weren't sharing it with anyone else. And it seemed that they, at least I feel that there were enough for all the second graders, but that might not be the case, I guess.
Yeah, it wasn't a one-to-one situation. They were all sharing carts. So they may have had the number, and that's the one that they would use all the time, but the cart wouldn't necessarily be available on a regular basis.
Okay, so the cart went somewhere, and they were, you know,
right,
exactly.
Elsewhere. Okay.
Okay, well, we've got a motion, and then if that motion is seconded, we can go into further discussion about it. But I think now is probably an appropriate time to take that.
This is Denise. Are you asking for a second, correct?
No, we have to make a motion first.
The motion. Okay, I thought you said there. Okay.
Yeah,
Right,
well,
well.
we have one, but we need to make one. Anyone?
I move that the Board of Education of Community Consolidated School District 64 Park Ridge-Niles approve the purchase of technology equipment to expand the one-to-one digital learning program into kindergarten through second grade.
Second.
Tom's got the second, Denise had the motion. I've got a question about the motion language, and I don't know how I feel about it, but we're saying that the 170 something grand is from CARES Act is going to apply to this. The motion doesn't really say that. So theoretically, I guess I'm just trying to figure out, and Tony, this probably is for you, you know, legally, can that money be used for a bunch of other things as well too, in addition to this, or can it only be used for this?
Money could be used for the things identified in the act, including specifically they identified technology to help with remote learning.
Okay. So do we want to, or do we need to tie the motion, you know, to tie this expenditure to sort of a, I don't know, lack of a better word, quid pro quo, that we're getting the CARES Act money and that needs to go towards this $211,000 expense or $280,000 expense?
That was my question. What is the total investment? It's more than the 211, is it not?
MJ?
Yeah, it is. It is whatever's colored in the chart.
So we're looking.
Why don't you give us a total number?
We're looking at like $330,000 with the CARES Act money.
No. Give us the total spend, and then we can go ahead and subtract the CARES Act money.
So the total spend is $498,750.
$500,000 with the CARES Act returning to us the potential of 171,000. So 370, 330.
Yeah, it's like the 330.
Just so I'm understanding this again, everybody can see the screen, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, trying to get my annotator out here again. This number was going to happen either way. It just would have happened here instead of here, right?
No, not for our initial purchase, because we do not have a one-to-one in grade 2.
No, I understand that, but
for next year,
we would have spent it next year because we would have had to spend that money to do one-to-one for everybody in third grade. So we were going to spend 189 grand to get everybody in third grade Chromebooks. Now
we still do for this year because our third graders don't have.
Correct. Right. All right. And that's a good point, I guess. We're still doing it because we're adding in a new class. So we are definitely spending more in next year, and that's why this is blank. Because in next year, we're not going to spend that in third. We're going to move that up to here. So for
Right.
1 year, we've got to do, we're adding another, well, we're adding 2 grades into it.
Mhm. Yeah,
technically.
we are.
Or
2 grades.
With the CARES Act, we're spending another 330.
Right.
Yes.
So I can be clear, the request is to spend an additional $500,000 that we wouldn't have spent otherwise if not for this recommendation. And by having the CARES Act, we are able to lessen the exposure to our books by $171,000, bringing us to the 330 or 327,000 as an additional spend for this year to get us to being a full one-to-one district for every grade.
Yes.
And was was our plan to be a full one-to-one district at some point? Is this something?
Yes, we were definitely moving towards that.
This
Yes.
is something you're just advancing quicker due to the situations that we're dealing with now and wanting to be ready should anything continue to happen or should something new happen.
Right.
Thank you.
So MJ, can you tell them if you just have an estimate of what we normally spend on the kindergarten grade 1 iPads? Because that's another thing to consider, what we would have spent. So is that figured in here?
It is not figured in there. But essentially we were running it was a 6-to-1 ratio in kindergarten. It was a 2-to-1 ratio in first grade and a 2-to-1 ratio in second grade.
So Luann, are you alluding to the fact that there's that the actual spend is probably less than 330 because by doing this spend of 330, the kindergarten would get the use of certain equipment that we wouldn't have to then go and buy at another time?
No, what I was trying to say is we have the iPads in kindergarten and first grade now. We just don't have one for each student. And what I was asking MJ is, when we do the purchase in 2022-23, is that going to satisfy the one-to-one for kindergarten and grade 1? Like iPads for everyone?
Yes.
Okay, so you're correct. So out of the 330, MJ, we would subtract what you would have spent this year to buy classroom iPads also, because you don't need to buy classroom iPads because everyone's getting one.
Right. And that's incorporated in the refresh. I don't have that figure up in front of me right now, but so I can tell you.
Regardless of what that figure is, it would be subtracted
Yes.
from the 330 that we're looking to spend of additional money because we would have been spending it anyway.
Right.
So
correct.
Now the only importance is it $350 or is it $105,000?
I'm pulling up her budget from last year just to look.
Yeah, me too.
Then do you get rid of all those Chromebooks on the carts because the second graders won't need them anymore, right? If you're
Exactly. So that's why I was explaining that a lot of the devices are going to get repositioned into other uses or incorporated into the one-to-one in kindergarten. So we're shifting around what we currently have already and making use of that. Let me see here.
Someone's typing.
That's me.
Let me see. So spent something 2 years ago.
So I'm assuming, Rick, you're going to be adding the number that we would have spent for kindergarten stuff next, right?
Right.
So the 171 is in parentheses.
Yeah, it's going to be. I'll start getting real accounting like on you here.
Either make it red or put it in parentheses, one or the other.
Yeah. Oh, I can't do individual ones. Sorry. Now,
Put the
right.
171 in parentheses.
There you go.
So many skills, Rick.
Yeah. How about that? Huh?
Annotator. So.
There we go. Now we know we're subtracting.
Sorry,
And
I'm trying to
while
pull up our
Luann and MJ, while you're looking that up, just so I'm clear on this too, then, so we know that by giving the kids Chromebooks in second grade rather than third, we're taking on a one-time expense this year, but going forward, we're just simply moving that up a column or a row, right, into second grade to third grade. But there is going to be an ongoing, quote, new expense for the kindergarten first grade that isn't currently there, because whatever number you give us in a minute here would have been what we were spending, but now the new number is going to be 265 every 2 years.
Correct.
Correct. Okay.
And in addition, Rick, in addition to that, it's also the maintenance number and upkeep number goes up, the replacement number goes up. You know, a lot of things go up. However, I think that portion of it we addressed with that it was the goal of this district to get to one-to-one at some point anyway.
Yeah. No, I agree. I'm just trying to figure out
whether we're advancing it sooner or later. That's all.
Yep.
MJ, are we going out to get these Chromebooks from the same vendor that we have the previous Chromebooks from?
We do have vendors that we have routinely worked with. Yes.
So are we going out for bid?
We are not, only because we already have secured the lowest possible price for the current model that we're looking at.
How do we know that if we haven't gone out to bid?
Well, we haven't gone out to bid, but we have quotes from 3 vendors that we have looked at. So in part, we choose a device that we feel like is affordable, and then that's going to serve in terms of like features on the actual architecture of the device. So we choose a model and a make that we feel we could support and that would support our students in their learning, and then we went and got bids for them.
But not bids. Not
in a formal RFP bidding process,
right.
Because we've already selected a particular model and device.
But that's not why we're not doing it. Tony, explain why we're not doing it.
Technology is exempt from the competitive bidding statute. So most districts still do what I call an RFQ. They request quotes.
So that's what I was going to say. I went through this at the Park District several times. I know the city has a very stringent procurement procedure in place, but I don't see why the board should be authorizing this without some sort of formal bidding process. Just because it's exempt from the statute doesn't mean that's the good thing to do. And we had this long debate before at the Park District, and I know they have at the city, that it's one thing to say that it's very specialized to have a consulting firm come in and design a network infrastructure and servers and all this stuff. That's specialized, and that you can go to one vendor with. And that's sort of the theory behind the exemption under the act. But this is a commodity. You can go to Micro Center, you can go to Apple, or you can go to, you can go anywhere. These are commodities that you can buy, and there's no reason we shouldn't be going out to formal bid and accepting lowest responsible bidder in a sealed bid process.
Isn't that what we did with the radio communication devices that we bought? Didn't we ultimately go out to bid with that?
I remember we had a big brouhaha over that. I don't think we ultimately did. I'm trying to remember. I think I
know we talked about it.
Me being the stick in the mud on that one, but yeah.
So we do have quotes that we have. I don't know if that's formal enough for you.
Well, I think the formality of going through the sealed bid process and requiring people to be responsible, not just getting a number, but forcing them to go through that process. And again, that's me talking. I'm not a majority of the board, but I think if we look at the procurement process that the city's put together, this would not pass muster. And there's a
I
reason
brought it
why.
up because I believe a competitive bid might bring in a better price than a quote.
Right.
So
Okay.
MJ, just help me understand. So, and I'm just thinking through this. So second grade students get their Chromebooks and then we're going to have them use them for 4 years, right? And we say they're good for 4 years. Then in sixth grade, we give them a new Chromebook and then they only use them for 3 years since the students are only with us. Is that Chromebook not good for a fourth year if we say it's good for the 4 years up front? I mean, I'm just trying to understand the difference there.
I could tell you, I've been using this Chromebook that you gave me 4 years ago, and it's still rock solid. So I don't know. I mean, looks like you're doing a pretty good job picking them.
Google says 5 years. So I'm just wondering how we take those two different cycles and can we then take those that have only been through 3 years and get them to the second graders? I mean, do we, I'm just wondering.
Yeah, and
So,
I'm trying to decide how to help the board. It feels like we got very in the weeds again. Like we're down calculating out, exact numbers and what everything means and deciding what books go to what grade levels and all of that. So I want to be able to answer the board's questions, but I also want us to try to keep moving forward.
Well, I guess I would say with two things, we're not interested in whether or not right now it goes to this grade or that grade. I think the board has to sign off on a close to $400,000 expense. And Larry just pointed out that this hasn't been going, even though it's legal, hasn't been going to a sealed bid, competitive bid process. And I think that absolutely is
right, because school districts don't do that.
To be going over.
Yeah. Yeah.
and we can certainly go through that process. We wouldn't be able to go through that process for the iPads because there's only one distributor for that.
Right.
So we could certainly do a formal bidding process if you would like. I do have 3 bids for this purpose, but those weren't selected in terms of a formal sealed envelope sort of process.
Regardless of what this board decides for bids, I just like to know the final, the final number cost to the district. If it's going, and I know I probably should have asked you this before we got to this meeting, but at some point, if I can just get an answer of, hey, we got 171 from CARES, our cost is 498. We would have spent this much on kindergarten stuff anyway. So really the cost to the district is this number. I think I would be able to make it determine, or at least be able to vote on this.
Right. Okay.
Sure. Sorry, I've been trying to answer questions and find documents, so I'm looking.
So I haven't found the last time we would need to pull the documents at the office. I'm just looking over her planning budget right now. If I go into our accounts payable, it's not going to tell me what they bought. It's just going to say we paid, Apple for stuff, but maybe, teacher computers or something else. So we can get that information for sure.
Luann, is it safe if 237 is what we're spending up here? Sorry, I can annotate again here. Whoops. 237, what we're talking about up there to spend to do one-on-one for iPads, and we were doing 6-to-1, isn't it just safe to kind of a rough number? I know it's not exact, but wouldn't it be 1/6 of that 237 number roughly?
Yeah.
Just so Tom, whether it's $300 or $300,000 we're talking about, it's roughly going to be $40,000, right? 240 divided by 6. 240K divided by 6.
So MJ, what Rick is saying is he took this $237,000 iPad number, which is a 1-to-1 number. And since the kindergartens are 1 to 6, he just divided the 237 by 6.
I don't think we should be using numbers we're guessing at. I'm
Right.
getting
No.
this, you know, we're just throwing.
Let us pull the
if
let us
we
pull
need
the
to come back, we need
invoices.
to come back.
Okay, well then if that's the case, then I if there's time, MJ, if you think that I think we're going to be doing a special meeting soon anyway. If there's time to wait on this one and get us the real numbers, that might be one option that the board might want to consider.
Yeah. I guess
So
go ahead. Sorry.
So the last time that we refreshed iPads was in the second grade, and we spent $142,500.
Okay, thank you.
But that was for 6 to 1?
No, that was for the 2 to 1 in second grade. So understand that we're moving the fleet that we have in second grade down to kindergarten and
Right.
backfilling that, and then we're moving the first grade down to kindergarten and backfilling what we need to for that, and then we're purchasing 550 for first grade.
Yep. So I think it's safe to assume again. I mean, Tom, I know that you might want an exact number here.
No,
but I don't know that
I was
it's not
okay
gonna
with it.
materially change the vote.
I was okay with a partial number, but
Yeah.
Dr. Olson said that we shouldn't work with partials, so he.
But I'm just saying, I guess I'm asking the question of the board right now. If we know that 498 is for sure new, and every 2 years 265 is for sure new, those are new numbers that are going to happen to do this. We get 171, one time, and probably somewhere in the vicinity of 100 grand less that we would have spent otherwise on the iPads. We're probably at about 270, somewhere in that ballpark. So, the delta for this year is going to be, roughly 225 grand to do that. Right? Yeah, 225 grand, roughly.
Right.
And then every 2 years, it's going to be a new, what we haven't been experiencing before is another 265 every 2 years. So that's it. So are we comfortable with that? I think that's the question. I get back to something I asked really originally on this to Tony Luisi is do we need to have any language in this motion that says that the CARES money is to be used for this, or is that just presumed and we don't, and I guess then the question would be, is there anybody on the board who wants to have that in there so that money doesn't get used for something else, if it could be legally used for something?
Okay, legally, you don't have to designate where the money's coming from. You have to approve the expenditure in the contract. But if the board wanted to add a directive to the motion, directing the superintendent and its team to utilize those funds, they certainly can do that.
Okay. And I assume, again, I know with the CARES money, it can only be used for very specific things, but obviously there's other things other than buying these Chromebooks it could be used for.
Yeah, so and I double checked while we were talking about this. There's about, I think it's about 10 or 11 items that are listed in the CARES Act. If you guys wanted to at a later time, you can go to our website under the COVID-19 update, and we have a write-up which actually enumerates the items that it could be used for.
Okay. So I think 2 questions for the board before voting, and that is, one, are you comfortable with the, again, roughly $225,000 new spend this year and the 265 new spend every 2 years? That's one, because that's what you're going to be voting on. And then 2 is, do you want to have something formal that says the CARES money needs to get used for this? Are you okay with it out? And obviously, if for whatever reason the CARES money, we've been approved for it, Luann, right? We just haven't gotten it.
Yeah, we're going to fill in the grant, and then we get a portion of our Title I. So that's
For
basically
sure,
what our portion is.
It's for certain. It's not like we
will for sure get the money.
Okay. All right. So it's not, so there's no like contingency for anybody, I guess, that the money's coming one way or the other. So do you want
Rick, can I ask you a question?
Yep.
Whether we tie the 171 to this spend or to something else, we're getting the money either way, and whatever we spend it on is going to be on something we would have been spending anyway, right, unless MJ has to come back to us for a bigger, because it's too big of a number for her to just spend it without asking us.
Right, we'd have to approve anything if
we have to approve something new anyway. So
right,
to me, I think it really doesn't matter whether we adjust the whether we adjust the language to tie it or not, because it still goes into our pot and we still spend it on stuff we were going to spend anyway, and they can't use it for new stuff unless they come back to us. So
Right. I agree, Tom. I'm just throwing it out there for if anyone wants to change that. All right. Well, any other, I mean, we've got a motion on the table. Is there any other discussion from the board on this before we go to a vote?
Yeah. I just wanted to say that I think that this would resolve some of the equity issues we've been having with kids who don't have access to devices. And we're going to be doing some form of remote learning in the fall and probably beyond. And I think this will even the playing field for kids that don't have these devices. And then for teachers are trying to troubleshoot on iPads, on their mom's old phone, and they're just trying, I mean, I think there's no way for teachers to adequately try to explain to a second grader when they don't know what device they have in front of them. Whereas if we all have iPads, we all have Chromebooks, they can walk that kid through, here's how you access this. So I think that this is important, not just for now, but going forward, because this will iron out a lot of those issues that we've been having, and then we can make sure that every kid in our district has a device that they can use for remote learning.
I agree with what Rebecca said, but are we all in agreement that we need to go out for bid?
I am. That's 2.
I look back, we had the discussion on the radio. We didn't ultimately go out to bid. We asked for more quotes, I think just because we were tight on time. But this is another situation where I agree with Larry and you, Rick, where I prefer that we go out to bid given the amount of money we're spending.
I would interject too that we are tight on time on this, because if we are to have orders ready for August, it really is a demand on suppliers. So I was already talking to Luann about what we could do, because Chromebook supplies are hard to come by if we wait any longer. So
may I ask, if we went out to bid, what would that process look like, MJ? Would you be going out to bid to the same 3 people that you have quotes from right now?
Well, be open to anyone who wanted to bid.
How many more people are out there that would be able to bid on this to provide us these Chromebooks?
In this magnitude.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not sure, just maybe a handful more. The 3 that we went out with prove that they have the ability to supply, and then the price at the prices that, you know, we were at the competitive pricing.
I don't understand the conversation, because you've got 3 quotes from companies. I have to assume that they could have supplied the Chromebooks with the 3 quotes. So I don't understand the conversation. It's a simple process. You go out for bid, and those 3 people bid. Those 3 plus more bid. But
that's fine.
Is there a possibility with everyone in the country trying to get to a remote learning situation, that we run into a possibility where by next school year, we don't have the ability to acquire everything we need, or we end up paying more for it because we're later in the game and there's more demand than there is supply? Is that
precisely? Yes, we're already running into that issue.
Well, there you go, Larry. That's the reason for the conversation.
So we can go out to bid if that's what you choose. I'll need to work with the attorney to put together a bid document first, and then we have to publish in the paper and allow so much time between the bid and the bid opening. And I guess I'd have to do the bid opening remotely, right, Tony?
That's up to you guys. Again, you can follow the statute to a T, but you don't have to follow it at all in this circumstance. So You can certainly do what the school code says you have to do for the things that need to be bid. You can do what you've done, an RFQ, or you can do something in between. I would just caution about promising, and if you are going to go for an RFP process, certainly you're going to look at cost, but I would just caution about promising that you may only award it to the most responsible lowest bidder. There may be other reasons that you guys decide, whether it's service or leases you already have in place with other vendors, that there are good reasons that you may want to spend a little bit more money than someone that comes in the lowest. But
Rick, do you want to ask the board to decide, to at least make the first decision on whether we should go to bid or not, so that we can move on to whether we if we decide not to go to bid, then maybe we could just move on and vote on the. We have to make a decision of some sort tonight, right? We have to move one direction or the other.
Yep. All right. So I heard Larry and Fred say bid. Again, I'm going to go around the horn right now. Rebecca, you're next to Fred on my screen. So bid, no bid.
No bid.
Carol?
I'd say bid, but then also procedurally, I think we would have to have the, let's see, Denise made the motion. I think we'd have to.
Oh, I know. Yeah, definitely.
To withdraw that and all that stuff,
Yep.
right? Okay. I'm fine with going out to bid.
Denise?
No bid.
Tom?
No bid.
I think that's 4-3. Me, Fred, Larry, Carol said bid. Rebecca, Denise, Fred, Tom said no bid. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So how long do you think that process is going to take, Luann?
It's got to get in line. I've got a lot of work right now, as we all do. It takes probably a week to 2 weeks with the attorney to get the document done because they're busy. I mean, you know, obviously we're not their only client, and we have to publish in the paper. And I'm not sure on this one how long we have to wait between publishing and actually awarding the bid. I mean, we could have it done because we did like Ron's equipment. I would assume within a month we could have it done. Don't you think, Tony?
yeah, again, if we're going to follow the statute to a T and all those timelines, then yeah, it will take a little bit longer. With this kind of, you probably already have the specs for what you need. So the bid documents probably wouldn't be that difficult. But if you're going to create your own process because you want to fast track it and cut the timelines, then we'll have to work on that with you.
And I would encourage that because we're supply is not necessarily that quickly available. So if we're wanting to hit an August rollout for second grade so that day one second graders would have that available to them, really going to have to expedite this.
And did I hear correctly, you can proceed tonight with the iPads, or do we need to wait? Is this a separate vendor? Yeah, it would be.
iPads are single source, so.
Yeah, so there, you're not going out to bid for those.
So we could create our own unique process just for these Chromebooks because we're not bound by statute.
Right. And correct me if I'm wrong, either MJ or Tony, but the iPads, even though you can buy them from various vendors, it's MAP pricing. And so they're stuck with a single price. Doesn't matter if you go to Micro Center to buy them or you go to Apple Direct, it's going to be the same price.
Mm-hmm. Right. And you would get the discount from Apple, not anywhere else.
Correct. The educational discount. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just seeing MJ concerned about the timeline. You know, where do we have enough time to do this when we're not the only school district that wants devices? And so I think we have to really think about if this is the way we want the district to go. It just doesn't seem like there's time and workloads in this COVID crisis.
I mean, we can definitely make it happen. You know, I mean, we can definitely make it happen if that's what the board wants. But I think you need to remember what Tony said. We go out to bid, we have to award it to the lowest responsible bidder.
No, we don't. He did not say that.
No, I would say be careful. Yeah, I would say be careful when drafting the bid documents that we don't promise that.
Right.
Okay, so for a bid, we can award to not the lowest
You
We
responsible?
can do whatever we want.
Right.
This
You're
is not
you're
bound by
basically just
statute.
right. You're not required to do this by statute. Sounds like you're going to follow the statute regardless. Kind of like you do for your truth and taxation hearing, right? We don't have to do that every year, but you
But we
guys
do.
you choose to do it. So you can rewrite the rules here if you needed to.
Okay, and I can talk to James Levy about that.
Yeah, James or Carrie. Yeah, would both be.
Okay.
All right, so if we're going to do that, unless anyone of the four who said they wanted a bid is going to change their mind now, we have to redo the motion. So Tony, any thoughts on how we would redo that motion so that, because I mean, there's nothing, I mean, all we're really doing is authorizing it to go to bid right now.
So there's nothing, someone needs to pull the motion.
So we don't have to vote. We don't have to vote to authorize it to go to bid though.
No, you need to, no.
Okay.
So it would be
Basically what you've told the administration today is that the motion's going to fail unless we go to bid. So they now have a clear direction of what they need to do in order to bring it back to you. I guess my question was, are we able to parse out the Apple products from the Chromebooks?
Well, it sounds like we are because those are single source and.
So is that something the board could move on tonight to get that in motion, and then the Chromebook?
So the four who want bids are, everybody understand that there's only one price that Apple can only go through Apple to buy that, and there's only one price that they offer. There's no negotiating.
That's fine.
Everybody, so okay, so Carol's fine. Larry, you good with that? Just for the Apple products? Sorry, you're on mute.
Yes,
Larry,
sounds good.
Sounds good. Okay, and Fred and
Yes.
actually, yeah, okay. All right.
Someone needs to I guess just read this motion, but.
Well, we have to rescind it first. So Natasha, who moved it?
Do you want to go around? Do you want to go around the horn and take the vote one more time on?
Well, we have a pending motion, Tom. That's what we're saying.
Right, so we need to have Denise
get that.
and Tom rescind.
I get that, guys. I'm saying before you rescind it, with all the new information that came out in the last minute and a half, 2 minutes, do you want to ask this board again if they still want to go out to bid?
Okay, there's four people. So Fred?
Yes, that's
you still want to go out to bid for the Chromebooks?
Yes.
Larry, do you still want to go out to bid to the Chromebooks for the Chromebooks?
Yes.
Carol?
Yes.
Okay. So we have to, so who's got to rescind? I didn't hear the, Natasha.
Denise moved and Tom seconded.
Okay. Tom, do you rescind your second?
I rescind my second.
And Denise, do you rescind the motion?
I rescind the motion.
Okay. All right. So we're going out to bid on the Chromebooks, and then we're going to do a new motion. So Denise, I'm looking at how you read this. So MJ, do you think we could just, how would you propose we do this so that we're limiting it to the Apple products? Because it's, could we say of Apple technology equipment to expand the one-to-one digital learning program into kindergarten through second grade? Yeah. Or should we take the through second grade out?
All you have to do is add the purchase of Apple iPads only.
Okay.
So after Niles, Illinois, you would say approve the purchase of Apple products, and then that's it. And then you just end there. Or Apple technology equipment.
Okay. MJ, are you good with that? Do we need to say the rest of that?
Well, you still want us to move forward with the Chromebooks for second grade. You just want that through a bidding process.
Correct, but we can't vote on that. We're not voting. We can't vote to do the bid process. We can only vote after you get the bids in. So the bids have to come in, then we have to vote on that. So we're only voting right now on the Apple iPads.
Can we, Tony,
okay.
Can it read like this? Can it read exactly like it says there, but can we just add the language? However, we're requesting that this go out to bid for the items that require bid, and approve the purchase of the items that don't require a bid, Apple products. That way we're approving the spend, but only until I don't know, forget it. It's so confusing. Okay.
You're approving the portion of the proposal that applies to the Apple technology. Right?
Yep.
Okay, that language works.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody want to make that motion?
I move that the Board of Education of Community Consolidated School District 64, Park Ridge-Niles, Illinois, approve the purchase of technology equipment to expand the one-to-one digital learning program into kindergarten through second grade that applies to the Apple products, iPads.
Is there a second?
Second.
Rebecca's got the second. Tom had the motion. Any further discussion on that? Natasha, anything from the public on any of this I should have asked before?
No public comments.
Okay. All right.
Okay, Salas, yes. Sanchez,
Yes.
Sotos,
Yes.
Riles,
Yes.
Little,
Yes.
Biaggi,
Yes.
Pearl,
Yes.
motion carries.
Okay. All right. So you will well, we won't have that by the emergency meeting we're talking about in a week, obviously, Luann, but we'll need to talk through just the calendar to make sure that, whatever you guys think is that you think you'll reasonably have all those bids in, that we have a meeting darn close to that so that we can approve that. So we may need to call another quick special meeting on that issue if it's too, if waiting till the next June meeting is too long. So
It will be too long.
Yeah.
Because we will need at least 2 months out for delivery.
Okay. All right. Okay, we're moving on to the first read of the policies.
Yep. And so Carol and Rebecca and I did meet and we did go through them as we typically do. There were no changes on any of them. And so we're presenting them to the board for first read.
Right, I didn't get any input either from board members or from the public. So that's where we are now. And they're all redlined in the packet.
Yep.
This was the easiest that we ever had.
But I might maybe just make the job a little harder because I know I mentioned this probably about a year ago, but I think the discussion we just had illustrates why we need a procurement policy that mirrors what the city of Park Ridge has. Because they're in the exact same boat that we are in terms of single source and technology. They have the same general limitations and exemptions to the state procurement laws with regard to bidding. And they put in a process there. It came about in the body cams was the big issue in Park Ridge not that long ago, but this is precisely why we do that. And we had this very lengthy, heated debate about a stupid $100,000 radio expenditure a couple of years ago, but it illustrates why when you've only got a couple of vendors that they know one of them is going to win the bid and they're going to get the call year after year from the district, that it's very easy for them to collude and to talk with each other about what, and then the district's at a complete disadvantage and the taxpayers are at a complete disadvantage. So if you have this, the city already went through this. They wrote the whole thing from scratch. We could mirror exactly what they do and have a very robust procurement policy in place that would have done away with the conversation we just had for a half hour. So I would personally really like to see the policy committee look at that and bring that to the board soon.
Rick, on the radios, I just want to remind you that we did use a purchasing program that had already won the bid. Remember? We had this whole discussion. So it was.
I don't want to relitigate it, but I mean.
I know.
But
I don't appreciate being said that we're colluding with vendors.
I never said you're
our
colluding.
Reputation.
No, Luann, I never said you're colluding. I said the vendors could collude. When you have the same 3 vendors that you're calling every time, they could talk to each other and they could say, hey, this time we're going to bid 100 grand on it. And the next time we're going to bid 120 grand. I mean, there's antitrust laws in this country for exactly that. It's not your doing. It's that they're pulling the wool over your eyes. That's what we're worried about. And that's why there's these procurement laws in place. Or, well, there's bidding in place. And that's why the city did what it did.
Well, once we get the document in place, we can use it. I mean, I have the one from Ron's, but that's a true bid we did.
Right.
Once we have this in place, then we can use it for other items too, that don't normally have to be bid out.
Right. So is there any discussion on everything that's been redlined in what we have in our packet? Any specific issues that anyone has in any of the language in here? The process again is first read goes to second read at the next meeting, and then we vote at the conclusion of that second read, right?
Yes.
Okay. So anything that we want the policy committee to go back with and relook at language before moving on? There's no vote to take tonight. This is just a first look. Okay, hearing none. Okay, well, thanks to the policy committee for that. We will hopefully, if anybody has questions between now and then, I guess we would send them directly to Carol and Rebecca and maybe copy Eric. Do you want it that way, Eric, or do you want it to go through you and down to them?
Either way is fine.
Okay.
Right, I think you could just email all of us, and then so for the procurement, that's 4:60. So just send us your red lines for that policy if anybody has any.
Well, I think what I would like to start with is looking at what the city's got, because it's completely different.
Okay.
And start with that as a, because that went through Ansel Glink. That had they spent a lot of time putting that together, and it's specific for this. I'm not talking about redoing what we normally do on other stuff. I'm talking about specific to the single source, exemption type stuff that we don't go out to bid on. That's what I'm talking about relooking at.
And I think the city's a good place to start. I hear you on that, Rick. I wonder if other school districts have a policy that we might look at as well, just to put a school district spin on that.
Okay. All right. We did personnel reports, so consent agenda. I know, Carol, before we go into this, I know you had something you wanted to bring up about possibly splitting off something in consent agenda and having a question for Tony.
Right, just the policy 2:230.
Okay, so are you recommending we take that out of the motion right now and do it separately?
Yes.
Okay, everybody, well, actually, I'm not even gonna ask. Why don't you make the motion and back it out of there, and then if people don't want to support that, they can vote no on it. But
you don't need a motion. Any board member can remove an item from consent agenda at any time.
Yep. Hey, Rick.
Yep.
I think we should schedule let's ask MJ what the absolute, or let's ask, somebody on this panel, what the absolute earliest is that we can vote on this Chromebook issue. And let's put a date on the agenda right now. While you guys were talking about that other stuff, I Googled something. HP is about 70 days out on Chromebooks.
Yep. And we've been talking to our vendors and the vendors that we normally get from.
If we order them today, it would be, from what I'm reading here, about 70 days before they can fulfill that order. And I don't know, I mean, so I'm just saying we should probably put a date on the books now so that we can have the opportunity of getting these. My only concern here is that we start the school year on e-learning. If we don't start the school year on e-learning, then, shame on me for even making this a big deal, because our kids will be in school. But if we start the year in e-learning, I'm just a little concerned, that's all. So let's get a date on the books whenever it is. Let's all make time to get back on here, since we already voted no for it.
Okay. MJ, do you have thoughts on, or Luann, when the latest date is that we need to do that?
I don't know if Tony can.
Eric?
I said, just be realistic. I want to make sure that we can really fit this in.
Right. Well, I haven't talked to James Levy yet, so I did email him to get a conversation going. Tony, can you provide any?
Well, assume you can get the bid documents by Monday. You still have to post it. You have to give them an opportunity to respond, and then you got to schedule a time for the bid opening. All those things would be up to you guys. But assume you can get something by Monday if you got on the phone with him tomorrow and got him the specs and everything he needs to put together the documents. Our bid documents are typically models that we plug in the bid specs. So assuming you can have it by Monday, how long are you going to post it? How long are you going to get people to respond? And then when are you going to schedule the bid opening?
And that would be Tuesday because Monday's Memorial Day.
Yeah,
so.
sorry, yeah.
So we probably can use most of what I've used for like Ron's equipment and stuff. And then we'll just have to put the modifications into it. So that shouldn't be bad.
So we're still talking about 3 weeks out, at least, which puts us in the second week of June, which then means orders aren't placed until the second week of June. And then we're counting days from there. And that's even if people still have supply. So I just want to.
Okay, so I've got a horse trick for everybody. I played this game with prevailing wage, and it seemed to work. If we agree that we're going to do some type of thing in the future so that we don't have to have this conversation for the umpteenth time with the board, what if we direct staff, I'm talking to the board right now, what if we direct the administration to go collect 3 additional bids from 3 vendors we have not used before, but that have supply and can get supply of model XYZ123 that we're going to buy. Because again, these are commodities. These are not like we're having some custom built Chromebook. These are things off the shelf. We may be looking at specific models, but it's not like we're having them custom built for our district. And we get 3 other vendors that haven't been part of the process before. And so we have 6 bids instead of 3, and we select from the lowest one who can complete the order out of there. And then we commit as a board to not go through this again and actually have a policy in place so that we're not put in this position again. I would vote yes on that and change my must be bid out. So of the 3 others, do I have any takers on that? Not that I necessarily do.
You're just saying revise the procedure, which Tony already said we could do. So.
Well, we're legally, we can do anything we want.
Right, exactly. So
yeah, I'm saying it's a hybrid. It's not perfect, but my personal concern with not going out to bid is not just not going out to the bid process, but going out to the same 3 vendors we've gone out to time and time again, who just know one of them is going to get the order. So at least if we're going out to other vendors who have not had a dog in the race with us before, they don't know whether they're going to get the deal or not out of it. And at least it takes some of the potential for shenanigans off the table.
So you're saying 3 additional bids from 3 brand new vendors. And we're going to agree that we're going to incorporate a policy about procurement for these single source.
Right. I'm saying that we as a board, I'm not saying that the administration has to do that, but a majority of this board is going to commit to putting something in place so this doesn't happen again. So we don't have to have the same conversation.
So Rick, my only purpose of bringing it up was to just,
I get it, Tom.
No, it wasn't to actually change what we did tonight, because it would require a lot more research for me to make that recommendation, because who knows, now that HP knows that there's going to be this problem, they might be ramping up production, and in 3 weeks they're going to have more than enough to give us.
I agree, Tom. I'm just tired of being in this position and then being told that we're under the gun and we have to do this. So sorry, you got to vote yes for it, because if you don't, you're screwing everything up. I've lost track of the number of times in the last 3 years I've done this. and I've just had it. So, I mean, I get it, but I'm sick of the conversation. We need to do this right going forward and not the way we've been doing it.
Well, I'll let you know right now that if the proposal is to get me to give a commitment, that I'm going to follow along with adding everything under the sun that would require bidding, even stuff that is not statutory. I don't know if I can go along with that. I don't want to put that much pressure on our administration for things that aren't statutorily required. So I wouldn't be able to give you that commitment this evening.
I agree along the lines of Tom. I can't commit to agreeing to a procurement policy when I don't know what the policy is going to read. So I can't say, yes, I'm going to agree on that.
Okay, well, I'm one vote. So what do you guys want to do? I mean, we can go back to this again.
We were talking about how Monday's Memorial Day, so then we were talking about Tuesday, but is there a possibility of getting the specs by Friday, this Friday?
I just don't think we're being realistic. So no.
Well, and I heard MJ say we need 2 months. So I think that I heard there's a setting up the computers August 1st, those first 2 weeks. So if MJ needs 2 months to put the order in, that's June 1st. We are 10 days away from June 1st. I'm not sure how all this is going to happen in 10 days with a holiday.
But what could happen by next week could be the proposal separating the issue of a future policy that nobody's seen yet. The proposal to go gather more quotes is probably doable by next week. Mm-hmm. But I'm looking now at Mary Jane and Luann for feedback on that. But yes, doing a formal process is going to take more time. But
Correct.
Calling 3 new vendors and getting more quotes to see if what you have is competitive, that seems like something that is doable by next week when we're hopefully having another meeting to talk about our other issues.
Correct.
I would bend on this, Rick. If we're not going to do this again, we did it with the radios. We're doing it now with the laptops. And if it's going to be technology, I would like a policy that addresses the procurement of that technology, so we're not finding ourselves in the same situation where we're wanting to go out to bid. And like you said, we're under the gun and can't do it.
Okay, so it sounds like there's support. Larry, you've got anything to say on that?
No, I'm sticking with a bid. You know, even if I'm the only one on the board, that's fine. You know, for over 3 years now, we've talked about coming to a board meeting and being asked to spend $200,000-$300,000, and we got to make this decision in a few minutes. And you know, it just seemed to me that kind of money, so we should have expected that there would be a bid. Like I said, maybe I'm by myself, and that's fine, but I'm not going to arbitrarily spend, especially now, but I'm not going to arbitrarily go out without going out for bid, take the taxpayers and tell them we're going to just flush $300,000 in a few minutes. I'm just not going to do it. But I understand, go out and get 3 more quotes. You know, it's still not a competitive bid, but maybe it'll satisfy the situation, but I would still vote for bid.
Carol?
I'm fine with the process of getting more quotes. Because, I mean, the ultimate goal is to get the best price for these Chromebooks. So, I mean, I don't know if we would get the best price, but maybe we'll get a better price by seeing who else is out there willing to supply these.
All right, well, if someone, I know we're on consent agenda at the moment, but if someone wants to make a motion, well, I don't even know if there is, I don't think we need a motion, right, Tony? I mean, if that's the new direction here, that we send administration off to get 3 more quotes and come back next week at this meeting we're going to have in a week with those numbers, and then the board will vote on them at that time. Right? We don't need, we don't need to take any action, formal action right now.
No, correct. You would direct them to bring those quotes back next week. And then obviously, as soon as we get the quotes and we can collect that data and potentially get it to the board members in advance of the meeting, if any board members have questions after getting that document, certainly you can ask them at the board meeting, but it would be very helpful if you could get to the administration in advance, and maybe a phone conversation would address some of the issues too. So,
MJ, since you're going to be doing that, can you just verify that HP hasn't ramped up production and they're okay filling orders now?
I'm going to have to go out, and we had selected a particular model only because that we are supplied parts to it, to our Lenovo touchscreen Chromebooks, because we're already a supplied vendor and we are able to do damage and repairs in-house. So we've chosen particular models because we've built the infrastructure to support these models.
Okay,
so what I'm going to do is not go to HP, but I have to put out there then where we're getting Lenovo's.
Okay, so maybe the Lenovo is not part of the shortage, is what I'm trying to say. And if there's no shortage, then we can still go out to bid. If we
right, and I've already done due diligence in terms of like getting 3 quotes to get the lowest price Lenovo. I would go out and get another 3 if you wish. What I'm bringing forward to you, I feel like, is the price that's out there and from the vendors that can supply it, because there is going to be a huge demand on Chromebooks. There is already. So what you're reading over there, Tom, is like what's out there in terms of general public information. But when we're talking to vendors and checking on their own fulfillment capabilities, I mean, we're waiting. We'll be waiting. So the longer we extend this process, the less of a chance we will have Chromebooks and things set up right when we start school. Just putting that out there. I mean, this is all in response to remote learning, our pandemic situation. I mean, we could have taken more time to do this, but this is in response to our student learning needs as we approach an uncertain time in the fall.
So are you saying you don't want to get 3 quotes?
I can get 3 quotes.
No,
I'm
so
just letting you know what.
I think the frustrating part is, we're flying by the seat of our pants, so through all of COVID-19, we are making decisions on the fly, many decisions a day. This is just one of a dozen different things that, plans that we have in the works. So, we have spent the time. We will push some things aside and we will do more work to ensure that the board has seen enough quotes, because we want to be able to do that. And we don't want to feel like we're springing something on you. We just want you to understand this is kind of how we've been operating for the last month and a half. Is everything is the immediate emergency now, and what has to be decided. So we continue to work through those things, but we have no problem going out and getting 3 more quotes. We'll do that.
All right, so we'll have 3 more quotes by next week. For next week, whenever we're, not Monday, because Monday's Memorial Day, but whenever that meeting is going to be next week, and we'll have that motion on the table to approve the quote lowest bidder that can supply out of those 6 or whatever quotes that we've got.
Yes.
That's the plan?
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
MJ, thanks for your willingness. I do feel badly. We're in a pandemic. You're the technology person. You are working, I think, to make remote learning happen. So I feel badly we're putting something else on your plate.
Thanks, Denise.
All right, so we're back to the consent agenda. So Carol has asked to remove the second reading of 2.230, so that's off consent agenda. So does someone want to make a motion for the remaining items on consent agenda?
I move that the Board of Education of Community Consolidated School District 64, Park Ridge-Niles, Illinois, approve the consent agenda for May 18th, 2020, which includes bills, payroll, and benefits, approval of financial update for the period ending April 30th, 2020, and the destruction of audio closed recordings, none.
This is Denise, the second.
Okay, Denise has a second. Fred has the motion. Any discussion on those items that remain on consent agenda? Okay, Carol?
And I'm assuming no public comment, right?
Oh, sorry. Yep.
Natasha, all right?
None, no worries. I would interrupt.
Yeah, okay.
No comment.
Little?
Yes.
Zealous, yes. Sanchez?
Yes.
Pearl?
Yes.
Sotos?
Yes.
Biaggi?
Yes.
Riles?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great. All right, Carol, do you want to talk about then what we took out of consent?
Okay, I just wanted to pull it out because this was something that the board discussed before. It's policy 2:230. Let me see. This is basically the little spiel we have before public comment. So I think the issue was, the constitutional issues about what type of speech can we proscribe. We can't have, content-based restrictions necessarily. So that's, let me see if we could even find a version of it. You know what, I think it is in our packet today, so hold on.
It is, it's the very last page
Yeah.
of that.
If everyone, pause so everyone can just go to that.
I'm on it, I can pull it up on the screen here.
Okay, you're right. That's on page one. Yeah, you're right. 131. So it is the last page. So the sentence at issue is the third sentence of the italicized red print. It says comments may be made on almost any matter related to the operation of schools, but we ask that you refrain from making comments concerning individual students or staff members. So that is still in there. We considered removing it. I'm also fine with removing it. I think Rebecca's fine with removing it. So the issue is that this is not necessarily a restriction, it's a suggestion. Whether someone could interpret it in the future as a restriction is up for debate. I know like half of us are attorneys, so we know people can sue about various things, whether they have, a valid cause of action or not, that's left to be seen, but still, we always want to minimize the likelihood of litigation. So I think this highlighted sentence, Tony approved. I think Eric went back to Tony. Tony said it's fine because we're not restricting anybody from talking about individual students or staff members, but in the future it could be problematic. There was that case in Rich Township where there was an individual who was highly litigious who did file a lawsuit in federal court in the Northern District because of a similar requirement that the school board stated orally in that case. So I just want to know.
But to clarify, they also enforced it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So they didn't just state it. In the two cases that I'm aware of, Rich Township, and then currently you can Google Hinsdale 86, who is also going through this right now. The issue was that they did not just ask, they made it mandatory. And when the individuals tried to speak, it's my understanding they were cut off. So that's where the issue with those cases lied.
So Tony or Carol, can I ask, I guess I can envision, there's a lot of people who come up to our meetings and say, I don't like what Dr. Frost has done with special ed. Well, that would seem to, what we're asking here would chill that kind of comment, right? Because they're talking about a specific staff member. Or I don't like what Dr. Lopez is doing about curriculum for the 4th grade. Well, that's same kind of thing. But I don't think we're necessarily saying we don't want people to come up and talk about specific staff members. We're talking, what we're really trying to stop is somebody coming up and talking about personnel issues. Hey, I heard about the Sweeney situation and I want to talk about, that or something like that in public. That's an issue that we've got to be more careful about because it's been reported in the paper, it's public, but we can't discuss it in public. So,
well, it's and to be clear there, you guys, what you guys have limitations,
right,
about what you can discuss. The public doesn't.
The public does not.
Right.
But
So,
they could also open themselves up again if they want to bring that situation up or any other. They're going to be opening themselves up to a potential defamation suit or whatever else. They're not subject to the same things we are. But so I guess where I'm going with this is, does it make more sense instead of saying individual students or staff members, maybe saying something like individual students or staff matters? Because then we're talking about specific issues.
Still content-based restrictions though, right? And so, Tony, I think that was the issue in the Minofu case.
I think we need to stay away from restricting people from saying something to protect them from saying something they shouldn't be saying. We need to just make sure we don't say something that we shouldn't be saying. If someone wants to come up and say something about a student or a teacher, I don't think we have the legal right to stop them. And I think the fear with this one sentence is that it could be interpreted as if we're trying to stifle them from speaking their mind. And maybe by it being there, it may give us the false sense of security that we do have the right to ask them if someone steps up and tries to say something about a student and one of us goes, hey, you can't talk about a student because we've been so programmed to not speak about students. We have to understand the line. We're not allowed to speak about a student issue in public, but if there's public knowledge and someone steps up to our podium and starts speaking, we can't really stop them. Correct me if I'm wrong, somebody.
you're right.
Yeah.
They have a First Amendment right to talk about those topics, whereas you guys are barred by certain laws. So this kind of provision is in many policies that the AG has seen. The issue has arisen when the board or the board president has cut somebody off and used that provision. So if you want to completely eliminate, if the board as a whole wants to completely eliminate that so there's no chance whatsoever, that's certainly an option. That does not need to be in there. But it is there. It is in a lot of policies, and as long as you apply it the right way, I've not seen anybody have legal issues, at least in the school industry, in the 2 cases I'm aware of. But again, if in abundance of caution, if the board doesn't want any dispute about it, then remove the line.
So Tony, just to use the example I just mentioned a moment ago with a teacher that's been reported in the paper, or for instance, a couple of years ago, student that was reported in the paper, although the name wasn't necessarily used in there. I mean, we don't have, if they come up and blurt the name out, like again with the student issue a couple of years ago with the gun, that was again discussed. I'm not telling tales out of school here. It was in the papers and on the news, but the student's name was never mentioned by the board, and I don't recall ever anyone coming up to the board table from the public and mentioning the student's name. But had they, let's say they said it was John Smith, there's nothing we can do about it, but nor are we liable for that person blurting that out at the meeting. That's not,
no,
we didn't induce them to do that. We,
right.
And not having this in there doesn't, someone could use that against us to say by not putting a statement like this in our policy and in our message to the public, that we're somehow suggesting or turning a blind eye towards it.
No, I think the bigger fear, Rick, is if one of us, let's say, we'll go with me because I'm the one that blurts out more than anyone on this board anyway. I blurt out, hey, stop that. Why are you talking about that student? And then that person goes back and reads this and says, oh, that's why Tom did it, because in here it implies that they don't want us to talk about students, and then they're suing us for me trying to keep them quiet. And what's it called, violating their
Well,
amendment.
I mean, the risk that goes into a provision like this is that every board member needs to understand the meaning behind it. And that's where other boards, I think, have gotten in trouble, is they do view it as a mandate that we cannot allow it, and they've stopped people. So by including this in this, Tom, if you had done that same exact thing that you just said, but without this policy, you still got an issue because you stopped somebody from their speech. Where this kind of sentence is, you know, sometimes has gotten boards in trouble is the board president, whoever's enforcing it, wasn't aware that this is a request. This is as a courtesy, we'd like to ask you, not an open session, to discuss our staff or our students. We can discuss that with other avenues. But at the end of the day, really the law is if they want to, we can't stop them. They have their 3 minutes and they can speak about it as long as they do it in a, you know, a civil and appropriate manner.
Tony, would it make sense to have somewhere in the policy something about what you just said, that that board members need to understand that this does not give them authority to shut down speach? I mean,
I think if I was going to, if the board was interested in crafting it differently, I think I would probably put something that said, listen, although you certainly have the right to speak about staff and students, we respectfully request that you try to address those issues in an alternative forum before coming to a public meeting. I mean, because that's, I think, what most districts want. They want the opportunity to have a conversation with the person before we have this kind of back and forth at a public meeting.
And I know all you lawyers are getting a handle of it and go through. It just felt like a nice thing to say. It's just how we should treat people,
Right,
it's really
right.
attention,
Right.
Right.
I kind of like what Tony just said about, starting that off by saying, although you have the right to do so, as a courtesy, we would ask that, you would find an alternative forum to do that and not discuss specific student and staff members, in public at a board meeting.
Yeah, but I could help soften that. Yeah, but.
So then I recommend, Rick, that we leave the language in there. We modify it to make it very clear that it's a polite request and not a demand. And I'd like to thank Carol for bringing this to all our attention, because now I know, and it's something that I really didn't think about before. I truly, in my opinion, believe that if someone started talking about a minor, that we had the right to stop them. And now I know that we didn't. So thank you.
Well, the other option is, I think Rebecca did also think it sounded better if we just remove the third sentence. So that's another possibility, and I would be on board with that, just to, because right now the other option is adding even more to this. And this is the thing that Rick would be saying at the beginning of
It's really long. I mean, just as an editor, I feel like I need to, I feel like Rick's going to have to unroll a scroll at the beginning to get this whole thing read. And if we're going to put it on the agenda, like as we had discussed, like this is a chunk of text.
Yeah.
And the next sentence talks about courtesy and respect. So, I mean, I guess I'm not going to throw a fit if you want to keep it in. I just think this is long.
Well, how about this? What if we have Tony go back and just massage that sentence, and then we see what it looks like at the end of this? Is there, let's back up a second too. Is there anything else that anyone else has concerns of in this that we would want to pare down or get rid of, or is this really the only sentence right now we're concerned about? And Carol and Rebecca, speak up too if there's anything that you guys were talking about specifically that you had.
Right.
My only issue is if the concern is brevity. I'll try, but it's probably going to be longer.
You're a lawyer, of course.
Yeah, I was going to say the lawyer is not going to be any help with brevity.
We get paid by the word. So. All right. Well, anybody else have any other than that sentence? Anyone else have any other thoughts, concerns, changes, deletions to the red text?
And we're in no hurry on this one, so we can bring it back as many times as we want.
Sure. No, and we should get it right, because hopefully this is not just for this board, but for many future boards that they use this.
Right.
Okay.
Do you think board members needs to be in there? So we delineate student, staff members, and does it need to be board members?
No, I don't think so. They can say anything bad about us, basically. mean,
Okay.
we don't want.
I think it's an ask that they don't individually say,
Right, no.
Denise. I think it's sets a good tone. I don't think they should individually, but that's just my opinion.
Right, but we're elected officials, so we should be
Right.
able to accept that.
All right, so we agreed that we're gonna try to massage that and we'll bring it back another time.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
Everybody good with that? Okay.
Okay.
Terrific. All right, so nothing to vote on that. We're going to bring it back for another read, and then we'll take it from there on that. So that was it for consent agenda. Approval of minutes. Anyone wants to make the motion on those?
I'll make the motion. I move that the Board of Education of Community Consolidated School District 64, Park Ridge-Niles, Illinois, approve the minutes from the closed meeting on April 20th, 2020, the regular meeting on April 20th, 2020, the closed meeting on April 27th, 2020, and the special meeting on April 27th, 2020.
Second, Fred.
Okay, any discussion, any changes to any of the minutes?
No, Rick, I just have one question for you. Since I walked in late on the first on one of those meetings.
Yep.
Am I going to have to abstain from voting on the whole motion?
I don't think you were late for any of the significant discussion, though, were you? I'm trying to remember.
I was late for a vote, though. I was late for the vote to go into closed.
Oh.
And so,
Tony, do you have any concerns with that?
And so was Fred. So it might, whatever you decide for me, you're deciding for Fred as well.
Tony?
I think you can go either way on this because I don't believe either of you missed anything substantive, but that vote. But if you want to make it clean, then don't vote.
Yeah, just
abstain.
abstain.
Okay.
Okay, any other changes? Anything that we need to get amended on here before approving them? All right, so it's been moved and seconded. Carol, do you want to call the question?
Sure. So Natasha, no comments, I'm assuming, right?
No comment.
Okay. Biagi,
Yes.
Riles,
Yes.
Pearl,
Yes.
Sotos,
Present.
Dallas, yes. Sanchez,
Present.
Little,
Yes.
motion carries.
Great. Okay, so Dr. Olson?
Yes, so the only item of note that I was just going to have Luann talk a little bit about the health insurance rates. So go ahead, Luann. You're on mute.
Okay. I'm assuming you all had a chance to look at this. Our insurance is listed in all of our collective bargaining agreements. We are in a co-op with it's a Northern Illinois health insurance program. There's about 30 districts in it. This year we're seeing, pretty large increases, much larger than I've seen since I came to the district. And it really is just how the co-op was this year. A lot of districts had really bad experience. And so when you're in a co-op, it's kind of all for one, one for all. So they've, carried us for many years when we were not meeting the amount of money we should be paying in based on the number of claims that we were having and the amount. So these are the new rates for this year. Within the collective bargaining agreements, it does talk about how much the board pays on each plan and how much the employee pays. So by the
Somehow you went mute, Luann.
Yeah, we lost you.
When we lost your mic.
Your video's still there, but we've lost audio from you. Oh, your earbuds.
Luann, do you want to disconnect your earbuds?
Yeah, you know what? While you're doing that, Luann, Joel, can you answer for the board? Just give us a ballpark in terms of the collective bargaining agreement. What for teachers? What percentage generally is covered, by district and what they're responsible for, just so we have a context for that within the collective bargaining agreement.
Do you mean how many, on average, how many staff members take an insurance plan?
Well, no, I'm thinking more specifically like what percentage, so here, I'm putting it up on the screen.
Yeah.
What percentage of the premium, of this premium, for instance, if the single, I'm just looking at, sorry, everybody can see that screen, single PPO, 350, 969, 35, what percentage of that, the single and then the single plus one and the family is the district paying versus the teacher?
Oh, God.
Roughly. Or Luann, if you know to chime in, is it like 75, 25? Sorry, didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Well, I don't, it's a difficult, only because I don't always see what every insurance plan individuals take, so.
But is it different? I can't remember right now off the top of my head in the collective, but I know I can see Tony frantically pulling the CBA, but is it a percentage across the board regardless of which program, which
There's a
policy you
percentage,
take?
but it's not the same. The number changes based on like the percent for a single plan versus a single plus one in a family are all different for what the district.
Right. But it's the same. I guess my point is whatever those three numbers are, it's the same regardless of which plan you pick. Same percentage.
Yeah.
Rick, this is Luann. I'm talking through Lori's speaker because my headphone died and I can't get the other ones to work right now.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes. So for any of these plans, it does, each PPO plan goes up to 7.6, each HMO goes up the 7.7%. That is correct.
No, but what he's asking is what employees pay.
Yeah.
It depends on the plan, but if it's single, so if you're just the employee, if you're on the 350, the employee pays 10%. If you're on the HMO, the employee pays, and this is as of 16, 17. I know it's probably shifted each year depending on the amount, but it looks like, again, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 plans, and at this time you may have more, but it goes from, on single coverage, from 3% to 10%. On employee plus one, they pay 33% down to potentially 14%, again, for the higher deductible plans. And then for family, looks like it's about 40% paid by the employee down to potentially as low as 21%, again, on one of the higher deductible PPO plans.
Okay.
So the
Yes,
more,
and the percentages have stayed pretty much the same. So I'm looking at our chart for this year, and the PPO 350 is the 10% single, 33% employee plus one, and family is 39%.
Yep. So I just wanted the full board to have that context as we talked about what all these, increases meant to the district and how much we're responsible for on it.
Right, and it varies, as Tony said, by the different plans. So like PPO 1200, the plans, and I didn't set this nomenclature up, but the PPO 1200 is a cheaper plan, and so the employee only pays 3.1% for theirs. So it does vary by the different plans.
Okay. All right, does the board have any questions for Luann on this? I know, again, one of the things we had talked about doing was at some point potentially bringing in our insurance broker, I think would be her title, just to get more context for us as we went into the collective bargaining negotiations and what what this meant, because it's a big chunk of what benefits, at least what's paid to the collective bargaining units, the staff in those units.
Yeah, and we can have Lisa come, or I'm very familiar with our plan and how they work. So we could talk about, because when you're looking at monthly rates, what does that look like annually? What is the employee paying per paycheck? I mean, different things like that.
I'd be curious too, Luann, just to hear from them if they even know what COVID-19's done or what they anticipated doing for insurance rates. If that's going to affect, I mean, are the insurance companies going to use it as an excuse to jack them up? Is it legit? Is it, is it really going to happen? And what that might mean to us next year at this time. Because I noticed on your, on the letter that you sent, or that you got, it's dated April 10th. So my guess is, COVID wasn't factored too much into that when they did their rates. But
No, because
if we look at it in September, it will.
They do a few years look back.
Yeah.
So, but we know it's going to have some effect. What effect, I'm not sure, because while we potentially may have people that did end up in the hospital, I'm not saying we did, we have a lot of people not doing surgeries that I wouldn't say are elective, but something that could be put off.
Right. Yep. Okay. Well, any specific questions that the board has maybe for Luann on this that we want her to ask of the insurance folks? Maybe we can forward those on to Eric and Luann, and we can continue to have this conversation over the next few months as we see things progress. So,
right. And as we would move into negotiations, that would be a good time then to have them come out and we can do a presentation so you guys have a full understanding of how it all works.
Right. That was the plan all along, obviously, until this hit, and then it kind of changed the timeline for everything. So.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions from the board on this? All right, Eric, anything else on your?
No, that was it.
Points. Okay, so I think just for the public, because we've been alluding to this, but I don't think the public knows what we're talking about right now, is that because of some issues with the collective bargaining agreements, the board is likely going to be holding a special meeting sometime next week. And at that meeting, while we're going to be probably partially enclosed and partially open for the collective bargaining issues, we're also now going to add in that agenda item for the technology purchases as well.
Yes.
Okay, so more to come on that once we get a date scheduled, but I'm guessing it's going to be Tuesday, Wednesday, something like that after the holiday. So, okay. Any new business from the board? Nope. All right, motion to adjourn from anyone?
Wait,
yeah. You got it in.
I hate to hold you up. We have provisions to pay the school fees online, but there doesn't seem to be a provision on there to apply to waive the fees. And is there something we put on District 64 website to tell them how to go through the steps to waive the fees?
Okay, so Lori, I got my computer to work, so I'm going to hang up my phone. So when they register for school, when they go through the registration process, it tells them about a fee waiver, and it has the document attached right within registration. It's very easy. Did you hear me? Oh,
yeah, I'm listening, but can you tell me again?
So when you register a student through the registration program, it will ask you if you want to apply for a fee waiver, and attached right there is the document that they need to complete. It's a one-page document, and it's pretty simple to complete and turn in. The one thing is that for this, people have to actually turn in their tax returns. And what we do is, so if we have somebody that loses their job in the middle of the year, they can complete a fee waiver application, and then we require documentation from their employer.
Okay. Yeah, because I think we're going to see a little bit of that.
Yeah,
all right.
We have had people that have had things occur during the year, not very often, and we do look at it and try to help them out and get them on free lunch and that.
All right. Thanks, Lynn.
All right. Any other new business before we call it a night? Okay, is there a motion to adjourn? Nobody wants to make, I'll make it.
So moved. Here.
Oh, wait, Rebecca made it. All right. Is there a second?
Second.
Fred's got the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thanks, everyone.